You've arrived at the nightly narrative journal, a quiet place where every story drifts softly into the night. Settle in, take a slow breath, and let the calm guide you. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, feel free to subscribe and join us for more nighttime tales. The journey to the lodge begins where the maintained road ends, where civilization gives way to wilderness, where the last signs of human habitation fade into the deep forest. The narrow track that leads to the lodge is barely more than two parallel lines pressed into the snow, evidence that someone has passed this way recently but not frequently enough to create a proper path. The surrounding forest is dense with pine and spruce, their branches heavy with accumulated snow that has fallen over the past weeks, creating a landscape that feels both intimate and vast, unclosed by trees, yet opening to endless sky. The air is crisp and cold, the kind of cold that makes breath visible and causes snow to squeak underfoot with each step. It is not the bitter, dangerous cold of deep winter at its worst, but rather the clean, invigorating cold of a stable winter day. Cold enough to remind of the season's power, but not so cold as to threaten or intimidate. The temperature hovers around 20 degrees Fahrenheit, perfect for winter travel, cold enough to keep the snow dry and firm, warm enough to make the journey comfortable with proper clothing. Moving through this forest toward the lodge feels like entering another world, a world where time moves differently, where the concerns and complications of modern life fall away. With each step deeper into the wilderness, the trees stand as silent witnesses, their trunks dark against the white snow, their branches creating intricate patterns against the pale winter sky. Occasionally, a clump of snow falls from a branch, disturbed by the wind or simply by the weight of accumulation, falling with a soft sound that is more felt than heard, a reminder of the constant small movements and changes that occur even in this seemingly frozen landscape. The track winds between trees and around natural features, following the path of least resistance through the forest, occasionally revealing glimpses of what lies ahead. A break in the trees shows a vast expanse of white, flat and smooth, extending far into the distance. This is the frozen lake, the reason for the lodge's location, the centerpiece of this winter landscape. The lake is completely frozen now, has been frozen for weeks, its surface covered with snow that has been smoothed by wind into gentle drifts and patterns. The ice beneath the snow is thick, measured in feet rather than inches, solid enough to support any weight, safe for walking or skiing or any winter activity. As the track emerges from the forest and enters the clearing where the lodge stands, the full scene reveals itself in a single breathtaking view. The lodge sits on a slight rise, positioned to overlook the lake while being sheltered by the forest behind it. The building is substantial, but not enormous, sized for perhaps 6 to 8 people comfortably, built in the traditional style of wilderness lodges with heavy timber framing and stone foundation. The walls are constructed of logs, each one carefully fitted to the next, chinked with mortar to seal against winter winds. The logs have weathered to a silvery gray on the exterior, evidence of many seasons exposed to sun and rain and snow, giving the lodge an appearance of having grown from the landscape rather than being imposed upon it. The roof is steeply pitched to shed snow, covered with dark shingles that contrast with the white accumulation that sits upon them. At one end of the lodge, a massive stone chimney rises above the roofline, and from this chimney comes a thin stream of smoke, evidence that the lodge is occupied, that fires are burning within. that warmth and shelter await. This sight of smoke rising into the cold air is deeply reassuring, a signal that transforms the lodge from merely a building into a home, a refuge, a destination worth reaching. The windows of the lodge glow with warm light, even in the afternoon, suggesting substantial illumination within, perhaps from fire and lamps. These windows are large, especially on the side facing the lake, designed to capture the view and to let natural light flood the interior during the day. Now, in late afternoon, they show as rectangles of golden warmth against the gray logs, inviting and welcoming. Around the lodge, the snow is trampled in places, showing where paths have been maintained to various necessary locations. A woodshed visible to one side, an outhouse discreetly positioned at a distance, various other small structures that support life in this remote location. The approach to the lodge's front door follows a cleared path, the snow shoveled away to reveal wooden planks laid across the ground to create a walkway. On either side of this path, the snow stands perhaps 18 inches deep, deeper in places where it has drifted, shallower where wind has scoured it away. The door itself is substantial, made of heavy planks, fitted with iron hardware that has been forged by hand, designed to seal tightly against winter weather while being easy enough to operate even with gloved hands or arms full of firewood. Standing before this door, with the forest behind and the frozen lake spreading out to the sides and front, there is a moment of appreciation for the lodge's position. It sits at the meeting point of forest and lake, of shelter and openness, of the known and the mysterious. The lodge represents human presence in the wilderness, a declaration that people can live comfortably even in this remote and challenging environment. But it also represents respect for that wilderness, built to work with the landscape rather than against it, sized appropriately for its setting, designed to weather decades of seasons while leaving the essential character of the place unchanged. The door opens smoothly despite the cold, its hinges well maintained, its fit precise enough to seal against weather, but not so tight as to bind or stick. Beyond the threshold lies warmth and shelter, comfort and peace, a refuge from the winter wilderness that surrounds the lodge on all sides. The journey through the forest is complete, the destination reached, and now the experience of the winter lodge by the frozen lake can truly begin. Entering The Lodge, The Great Room, stepping through the door into the lodge is like passing through a portal into another realm, from the cold and silence of the winter forest into warmth and the gentle sounds of fire and settling timbers. The transition is immediate and profound, felt in every sense simultaneously. The warmth wraps around like a blanket. The scent of wood smoke and pine fills the nostrils. The golden light from fire and lamps replaces the pale light of winter afternoon. The space itself envelops and welcomes. The door opens directly into the great room, which serves as the heart and center of the lodge. This room occupies perhaps half of the entire building's footprint, a large open space that combines the functions of living room, dining area, and kitchen into one generous expanse. The ceiling is high, following the pitch of the roof, supported by massive beams of dark wood that span the width of the room. These beams are hand-hewn, showing the marks of the tools that shaped them, substantial enough to support the roof even under the heaviest snow load. From these beams hang various items: oil lamps on chains that can be raised or lowered, bundles of dried herbs, strings of carved wooden decorations that cast interesting shadows when the lamps are lit. The floor is made of wide planks, worn smooth by decades of use, their surfaces showing the subtle undulations that come from wood aging and settling. These planks are covered in places by rugs, thick woven pieces in patterns of red and brown and cream, adding both warmth and sound dampening to the space. The rugs are clearly old, their patterns faded in places by sunlight and wear, but they are well maintained, clean and intact, contributing to the overall sense that this lodge is cared for and valued. But the dominant feature of the great room, the element that immediately captures attention and draws the eye, is the fireplace. This fireplace occupies the entire end wall of the room, a massive structure built from river stones, each one carefully selected and placed to create a wall that is both functional and beautiful. The stones vary in size from small rounded pieces to large flat slabs, in colors ranging from gray to brown to rust red, creating a complex mosaic of natural patterns. The fireplace opening is large enough to stand inside, designed to accommodate logs of substantial size, capable of producing the heat necessary to warm this entire space even in the coldest weather. Within this massive opening burns a fire that has clearly been established for hours, perhaps even days. The fire is built on a bed of coals, several inches deep, evidence of many logs consumed and reduced to this glowing base. Upon these coals rest three large logs, each one perhaps 18 inches in diameter, split in half to provide flat surfaces that allow them to nestle together efficiently. These logs burn with steady flames, not the aggressive, consuming flames of a newly lit fire, but the deep, hot flames of well-seasoned wood burning at ideal temperature. The heat radiating from this fire is substantial, but not overwhelming, maintained at a level that provides warmth throughout the room without making the immediate area uncomfortably hot. In front of the fireplace, positioned at a distance that balances warmth with comfort, sits a collection of furniture that defines a conversation area and relaxation space. There is a large sofa, its frame made of peeled logs, its cushions covered in fabric that shows wear, but remains intact, designed for comfort rather than style. Two armchairs flank the sofa, similar in construction and materials, positioned at angles that allow occupants to easily see both the fire and each other. Between these seating pieces sits a low table made from a single thick slab of wood, its surface showing the natural edge of the tree from which it was cut, polished smooth, but retaining its organic shape. The walls of the great room are made of the same logs that form the exterior, though here they are visible in their full natural state, the interior surface of each log showing the grain and color of the wood. These walls are decorated with various items that speak to the lodge's purpose and history. There are snowshoes of traditional design, woven with rawhide in intricate patterns, hanging in pairs at different heights. There are old skis, wooden boards with leather bindings, remnants of earlier eras of winter sport. There are photographs in simple frames, black and white images showing the lodge in different seasons, different groups of people gathered on the porch or out on the ice, visual evidence of decades of use and enjoyment. The windows on the lake side of the room are spectacular, a series of large panes that provide an unobstructed view of the frozen lake and the landscape beyond. These windows are positioned to allow someone sitting in the seating area to gaze out at the scene without obstruction, creating a connection between the interior space and the exterior landscape. The glass is old, showing slight imperfections and waves that indicate hand manufacture, and these imperfections create subtle distortions in the view that somehow enhance rather than detract from the beauty of what is visible beyond. The view through these windows is breathtaking in its simplicity and scale. The frozen lake stretches away from the lodge, its white surface marked by subtle variations in tone and texture. Areas where wind has swept snow away from smooth ice, areas where snow has drifted into small ridges, areas where the snow lies smooth and even. The lake extends perhaps half a mile or more, its far shore visible as a dark line where forest meets ice. Beyond the far shore, mountains rise against the sky, their peaks white with snow, their shapes creating a dramatic horizon. The sky itself is pale, that particular shade of winter blue-gray that suggests cold and clarity, dotted with high clouds that catch the afternoon light. The kitchen area of the great room occupies the far end from the fireplace, separated from the living space not by walls, but by function and furniture placement. Here stands a large wood-burning stove, made of cast iron, its surface flat for cooking, its body containing a firebox and oven. This stove radiates its own heat, supplementing the warmth from the fireplace, and on its surface sit various pots and kettles, some containing food or water, others simply stored there for convenient access. The stove is beautiful in its utilitarian way, decorated with embossed patterns in the iron, its nickel-plated trim polished to a shine that reflects the firelight. Adjacent to the stove is a work surface made of thick planks, providing space for food preparation. And below this surface are shelves and cabinets holding dishes, pots, utensils, and dry goods. The dishes visible through the open shelves are simple but attractive, ceramic pieces in earth tones, metal cups and plates suitable for camp use, wooden bowls, and cutting boards that show the patina of long use. Everything in the kitchen area speaks to practicality and durability, chosen for function but with an eye to creating a pleasing aesthetic. A long table occupies the space between kitchen and living areas, sized to seat 8 or 10 people comfortably. This table is made of thick planks supported by sturdy legs, its surface scrubbed clean, but showing the marks and stains of countless meals prepared and consumed upon it. Around the table stand chairs of mismatched designs, each one solid and functional, each one contributing to the sense that this lodge has accumulated its furnishings over time, rather than being decorated all at once according to a plan. The variety in chairs creates interest rather than disorder, suggesting that comfort and utility matter more than matching aesthetics. The overall impression of the great room is one of complete comfort and practical elegance. Nothing here is precious or fragile. Nothing demands careful handling or special treatment. Yet everything is well made and well maintained. Everything serves its purpose beautifully. This is a space designed for living, for gathering, for the simple pleasures of warmth and food and companionship in the midst of winter wilderness. The great room welcomes without pretension, offers comfort without luxury, creates a sense of home in this most remote of locations. The frozen lake in the winter landscape from the large windows of the great room. The frozen lake dominates the view, a vast expanse of white that changes character with every shift in light and weather. The lake is approximately 2 miles long and perhaps half a mile across at its widest point, an elongated oval shape nestled in a valley between forested hills. The ice that covers this lake is thick and solid, formed gradually over weeks as autumn gave way to winter, as temperatures dropped and stayed low, allowing the water to freeze in layers until the entire surface, from shore to shore, became solid. The process of freezing creates interesting patterns in the ice, visible in places where snow has been blown clear or where the top layer of snow is thin enough. There are areas where the ice froze smooth and clear, allowing a view down into the depths, revealing the greenish-blue color of water below, sometimes even showing fish or aquatic plants suspended in that frozen world. In other areas, the ice froze with bubbles trapped within it, creating patterns of white dots and lines that look like abstract art. Still other areas show pressure ridges, places where ice sheets pushed against each other as they expanded, buckling upward to create low walls or cracks that have since frozen solid. The snow covering the ice varies in depth and character across the lake's surface. Near the shores, especially on the lee side protected from prevailing winds, the snow might be 8 or 10 inches deep, soft and even, marked only by the occasional track of an animal that ventured onto the ice. Farther from shore, in the middle of the lake where wind has full effect, the snow is thinner, perhaps only 2 or 3 inches deep, and sculpted by wind into subtle waves and patterns that resemble sand dunes in miniature. In some exposed areas, the wind has swept the snow away entirely, leaving bare ice that appears black when viewed from a distance, though up close it reveals its true transparent nature. The lake's edges, where ice meets shore, show the interface between water and land. The ice extends right to the bank in most places, though there are areas where ice has pulled away from shore as temperatures fluctuated, creating narrow gaps that have since refrozen with thinner ice. Along the shoreline, reeds and marsh grasses protrude through the ice and snow, their dried stalks golden brown, standing in clusters that provide vertical elements in this predominantly horizontal landscape. These reeds catch and hold snow in interesting ways, creating small drifts and patterns, providing perches for small birds, adding texture and detail to the edges of the vast white expanse. Trees grow close to the shore around much of the lake's perimeter, primarily conifers, pine and spruce and fir, their dark green needles providing color contrast to the white snow. These trees are reflected in areas where ice is clear and snow is absent, creating mirror images that double their presence and create moments of visual confusion and beauty. In some places, trees lean out over the lake, their branches extending beyond the shore, casting shadows onto the ice and snow below, collecting snow on their needles to create sculptural forms that seem to defy gravity. The far shore of the lake, visible from the lodge windows, shows as a dark line of forest rising from the ice, dense and unbroken, stretching from one end of the visible lake to the other. This forest-covered shore provides a strong horizontal element in the composition of the view, a clear division between the white expanse of the frozen lake and the mountains that rise beyond. The trees on this far shore appear slightly blue due to atmospheric perspective, that phenomenon where distance adds a blue cast to objects, making them seem farther away than they might actually be. Beyond the far shore, mountains rise in layers, each ridge slightly lighter in tone than the one before it, creating a sense of depth and distance. These mountains are not particularly high by alpine standards, perhaps rising 3 or 4,000 feet above the valley floor. But their presence is commanding, their snow-covered slopes and rocky outcrops creating dramatic shapes against the sky. The mountains show various aspects as they recede into the distance, some presenting steep faces, others showing gentler slopes, some appearing as sharp peaks, others as rounded summits. The sky above this landscape is a character unto itself, as important to the overall scene as the lake or mountains. In winter, the sky can take on extraordinary qualities, sometimes crystal clear and deeply blue, other times overcast and heavy with the promise of snow, sometimes showing dramatic clouds lit by the sun at various angles. This afternoon, the sky is partially clouded, with high thin clouds that filter sunlight without completely obscuring it, creating a diffused, even light that eliminates harsh. The clouds themselves are fascinating, streaked across the sky in parallel lines, suggesting high-altitude winds, creating patterns that seem to radiate from a point beyond the visible horizon. The light in winter has qualities different from any other season, modified by the low angle of the sun, by reflection from snow and ice, by the clarity of cold air. Winter light is cooler in tone, containing more blue than the warm light of summer, creating shadows that appear almost purple against white snow. This light changes constantly through the day, moving from the pink tones of dawn through the bright clarity of midday to the golden warmth of afternoon to the deep blue of twilight. Each phase of light reveals different aspects of the landscape, shows features that were invisible moments before, transforms the familiar into something new and surprising. Animal tracks provide evidence of life in this frozen landscape, stories written in the snow waiting to be read. Near the shore, the delicate prints of a fox show where it trotted along the ice edge, pausing occasionally to investigate interesting scents or sounds. The tracks reveal the fox's path, how it moved from the forest onto the ice, followed the shore for a distance, then returned to the trees. Further out on the lake, larger tracks show where deer crossed from one side to the other, their hoofprints deep in the soft snow near shore, but barely visible on the wind swept ice of the lake center. Bird tracks tell their own stories, showing where crows landed on the ice, hopping and walking as they searched for whatever food might be available. Smaller tracks indicate the presence of chickadees and nuthatches, winter residents that remain active even in the coldest weather, constantly searching for seeds and insects. Occasionally, the tracks of larger birds appear, perhaps ravens or hawks, their distinctive footprints and sometimes wingtip marks in the snow showing where they landed and took off again. The frozen lake and its surrounding landscape create an environment of profound beauty and peace, a scene that invites contemplation and creates a sense of connection to the natural world. From the warmth and comfort of the lodge, visible through the large windows, this landscape becomes a living painting, constantly changing with shifts in light and weather, always present, always fascinating, always offering something new to observe and appreciate. The lake in its frozen state represents winter at its most characteristic, showing the season's power to transform liquid into solid, to cover the world in white, to create conditions that are both challenging and extraordinarily beautiful. Lodge interior. Exploring THE rooms beyond the great room, the lodge contains additional spaces, each one designed for specific purposes, each one contributing to the overall functionality and comfort of the building. These rooms are accessed through doorways that open off the great room, and exploration of them reveals the care and thought that went into the lodge's design and construction. The entire building demonstrates that principle of wilderness architecture where every element serves a purpose, where beauty emerges from function rather than being applied as decoration, where materials and methods are chosen for their appropriateness to the setting and climate. The first bedroom is accessed through a door positioned near the kitchen area of the great room. This door, like all doors in the lodge, is made of thick planks fitted tightly together, hung on substantial hinges, capable of being securely latched. The bedroom beyond is modest in size, perhaps 12 feet by 14 feet, large enough for comfortable habitation, but not wastefully spacious. The walls here are the same log construction as the rest of the lodge, the interior surfaces showing the natural wood, though here the logs have been whitewashed, creating a lighter, brighter space that feels more intimate than the great room. The bed dominates this room, positioned against one wall, built from log frames, with a thick mattress supported on rope springs or wooden slats. The bed is dressed with layers of blankets and quilts, each one handmade, showing patterns of geometric precision or more organic designs, depending on the maker's preference and skill. These quilts are works of art in their own right, created from fabric scraps carefully pieced together, the patterns showing both traditional designs passed down through generations and more innovative arrangements unique to their creators. The colors in the quilts are somewhat faded, evidence of years of use and washing, but this fading only adds to their beauty, creating soft harmonies of related tones. At the head of the bed, pillows are stacked 2 or 3 deep, their cases made of simple white cotton, clean and pressed. The overall effect of the bed is one of deep comfort, suggesting warmth and rest, inviting the tired traveler to sink into soft layers and drift into sleep. A small table sits beside the bed, its surface holding an oil lamp with a glass chimney, a box of matches, perhaps a book or two for bedtime reading. The lamp is functional rather than decorative, designed to provide good light for reading while consuming fuel efficiently. A window in this bedroom looks out toward the forest behind the lodge, framed by simple curtains of heavy fabric that can be drawn closed for privacy or to block light, though most of the time they are pulled back to allow the view. The window is smaller than those in the great room, appropriate for a bedroom where the emphasis is on rest rather than views, but still substantial enough to provide natural light during the day and a sense of connection to the outside world. Through this window, tree trunks are visible, dark vertical lines against the white snow, creating a pattern that is both simple and complex. The floor in the bedroom is covered almost entirely by a large rag rug, braided from strips of old fabric in spiraling rounds, creating a soft surface underfoot. The colors in this rug have faded to gentle tones of blue and cream and brown, and its surface shows wear in paths where feet have traveled most frequently. This rug provides both insulation from the cold floor and sound dampening, contributing to the quiet restfulness of the room. A second bedroom, similar in size and arrangement to the first, opens off the great room from the opposite side. This room contains 2 single beds rather than one large one, positioned parallel to each other along opposite walls, each one dressed with the same careful layering of quilts and blankets. This arrangement suggests that the room is intended for friends sharing space or for family members comfortable with less privacy. Between the beds, a single window looks out toward the lake, positioned so that someone lying in either bed could see the view without rising. The light from this window floods the room during the day, creating a bright, cheerful space. Near the entrance to the lodge, positioned for convenient access, but separated from living spaces for obvious reasons, is a small room that serves as mudroom and storage. This room has a floor of stone rather than wood, more practical for wet boots and melting snow. Along the walls are hooks and pegs for hanging coats and scarves, below which are benches where boots can be removed and stored. The walls above the hooks display additional winter equipment, extra snowshoes, ice fishing gear, coils of rope, all the various tools and implements that support winter activities. Shelves in this mudroom hold supplies and equipment, boxes of candles, containers of lamp oil, extra blankets still in their storage bags, tools for various repairs and maintenance. Everything is organized and accessible, labeled where appropriate, maintained in good condition ready for use. This room demonstrates the practical side of wilderness living, where self-sufficiency requires maintaining adequate supplies and keeping equipment in good repair. A separate small building, connected to the lodge by a covered walkway, contains additional storage and what would traditionally be called a cold room, a space kept unheated where food can be stored at temperatures just above freezing. This room holds provisions that would be damaged by complete freezing but benefit from cold storage, root vegetables, apples, containers of milk or cream, hanging game meat. The cold room demonstrates traditional food preservation methods, still effective and practical in this setting where refrigeration might be unavailable or unreliable. Throughout all these spaces, the construction is solid and well maintained, showing care in original building and ongoing upkeep. The logs are well chinked, preventing drafts and heat loss. The windows fit properly in their frames, opening and closing smoothly, sealed against cold when closed. The doors hang true, latching securely, showing no signs of warping or binding. These details matter enormously in a wilderness setting, where building failure could have serious consequences, where comfort and safety depend on the integrity of the structure. The overall impression from exploring these additional rooms is of a lodge that has been designed thoughtfully and built well, that serves its purpose of providing comfortable shelter in a remote location, that has been maintained with care over years or even decades. Each room contributes to the whole. Each space supports specific activities and needs, and together they create a complete home adapted perfectly to its setting and purpose. The lodge becomes not just a building, but a refuge, a place where people can live comfortably even in the midst of winter wilderness, secure and warm while the cold and snow surround them on all sides. Afternoon light and winter activities. As afternoon progresses at the lodge, the quality of light undergoes subtle but significant changes that transform the appearance of the landscape and the character of the interior spaces. The sun, already low in the winter sky, begins its descent toward the horizon, its angle creating longer shadows and warmer tones that bathe the frozen lake and surrounding forest in golden light. This transformation happens gradually, imperceptibly from moment to moment, but dramatically obvious when comparing the scene now to how it appeared an hour earlier. The light streaming through the lodge's large windows takes on a distinct character, warmer and more golden than the cooler light of midday, creating pools of brightness on the wooden floor that slowly move as the sun's angle changes. These pools of light reveal the texture of the wood floor, the grain patterns, the subtle variations in color between boards, details that are less visible in the more diffused light of morning or overcast days. The light also catches dust motes floating in the air, illuminating them so they appear as tiny sparks drifting through the space, visible evidence of air currents and the simple fact of the lodge's habitation. Outside, the frozen lake becomes a canvas for light to play across. The low-angle sun, creating complex patterns of light and shadow on its uneven surface. Areas of smooth snow reflect the light brilliantly, appearing almost to glow with internal luminescence. Areas where ice is exposed or snow is very thin show darker tones, absorbing rather than reflecting light. The variations in the snow's surface, the gentle drifts and ridges created by wind, become much more apparent in this angled light, their forms revealed by the shadows they cast, transforming the lake from a simple white expanse into a landscape of subtle topography. The forest surrounding the lake also transforms in this afternoon light, the trees casting long shadows that reach across the snow, the horizontal light penetrating deeper into the woods than is possible when the sun is higher. The dark green of pine needles appears richer and more saturated in this warm light, contrasting beautifully with the white snow collected on branches. Individual trees stand out more clearly, their forms and characters revealed, the forest appearing less as a uniform mass and more as a collection of individual organisms, each one unique. From the lodge, evidence of various winter activities becomes visible across the landscape. Out on the frozen lake, several ice fishing shelters are scattered, small structures that from this distance appear as dark rectangles against the white snow. These shelters, also called ice houses or fishing shacks, are simple constructions, essentially boxes large enough for one or two people to sit inside, built to provide wind protection and some warmth for those engaged in ice fishing. The shelters are positioned over holes cut through the ice, allowing fishing lines to drop into the water below. Some of these ice fishing shelters are quite elaborate, equipped with small stoves for heat, insulated walls, even windows to allow light inside while blocking wind. Others are minimal, just a frame covered with canvas or plastic, providing basic protection from the elements. The shelters are often painted in bright colors, reds and blues and greens, creating spots of vivid color against the white landscape, making them easy to identify and locate even in poor visibility or from great distances. Tracks in the snow show where people have walked or skied from shore to these fishing shelters, the paths worn smooth by repeated passage. Some of the tracks are fresh, showing as clear depressions in the snow surface, while others are older, partially filled by windblown snow or by the light snowfall that occurred several days ago. These tracks tell stories of activity and movement, of people venturing out onto the ice, spending time in the shelters, returning to shore, creating a visible record of winter recreation. Cross-country ski trails are visible as well, parallel lines in the snow that lead from the lodge area into the forest and out across the lake. These trails are set by skiers traveling the same route repeatedly, the passage of skis creating grooves that subsequent skiers can follow, making the skiing easier and more enjoyable. The trails wind through the forest following the easiest routes, avoiding steep climbs or descents where possible, seeking out scenic views and interesting features, connecting the lodge with various points of interest in the surrounding area. One ski trail is visible leading along the lake shore, staying close to the interface between ice and forest, following the contours of the shoreline as it curves and meanders. This trail would provide beautiful views of the lake while offering the security of having solid ground nearby, appealing to skiers who might be nervous about venturing far out onto the ice. Another trail leads straight out across the lake toward the far shore, the most direct route from one side to the other. likely used by skiers seeking efficiency over sightseeing. Snowshoe tracks are also present, distinguishable from ski tracks by their broader impression and different pattern. Snowshoes leave distinctive oval or teardrop-shaped prints, often with a visible tail mark, and their tracks show a walking rather than gliding gait. Several sets of snowshoe tracks lead from the lodge into the forest, probably heading toward hiking destinations, perhaps to viewpoints on nearby hills, perhaps simply loops through the woods for exercise and enjoyment of the winter landscape. Near the lodge, evidence of more practical winter activities appears in the form of well-worn paths to various necessary locations. A path leads to the woodshed, clearly traveled multiple times daily as fuel for the fireplace and stove is retrieved. The path shows as a slight depression in the snow, packed down by repeated foot traffic, sometimes icy, where the snow has been compressed and partially melted by the passage of many feet. Another path leads to the outhouse, similarly well used, maintained clear of deep snow for obvious practical reasons. The woodshed itself is visible from the lodge windows, a simple structure with open sides and a roof, designed to keep firewood dry while allowing air circulation to continue the seasoning process. The shed is well stocked with wood, split pieces stacked neatly in rows, the stacks showing different types of wood identifiable by their bark and color. Some wood shows the furrowed bark of oak, dense and long burning. Other pieces show the smooth bark of birch, quick to light and hot burning. Still other pieces are from pine or other softwoods, useful for starting fires or for quick heat. Around the lodge, other signs of habitation and activity appear in the snow. Places where snow has been shoveled and piled create small mountains of displaced snow. Areas where water has been carried inside show as dark stains where drops and splashes have melted and refrozen. A sled leans against the lodge wall, useful for transporting firewood or supplies across snow. A pair of skis stands upright in a snowbank near the door, placed there for convenient access. As afternoon progresses toward evening, the activities around the lodge begin to shift from outdoor pursuits to indoor preparations. The time approaches when fires need to be tended, when thoughts turn to the evening meal, when the transition from day to night begins. The afternoon light, so beautiful and warm, begins to fade as the sun approaches the horizon, and this fading light signals the natural rhythm of the winter day. The inevitable movement from light to darkness, from activity to rest, from the external world to the internal refuge of the lodge. Evening preparations and firelight as the afternoon gives way to evening. The activities at the lodge shift naturally to accommodate the changing light and dropping temperature. The sun, which has been providing its golden light across the landscape, now approaches the horizon, its lower edge touching the line where mountains meet sky. The quality of light changes rapidly during this transition, the warm glow intensifying briefly before beginning to fade, the shadows growing longer and deeper, the sky beginning its transformation from blue to the more complex colors of sunset. Inside the lodge, attention turns first to the fire, which has been burning steadily all day, but now requires renewal to provide adequate heat through the evening and night. The fire in the great stone fireplace has burned down somewhat. The 3 large logs from earlier, now reduced to glowing coals and charred remains. These coals, however, represent substantial stored heat, and building the fire up again is a matter of adding new fuel rather than starting from scratch. The process of rebuilding the fire is methodical and satisfying. drawing on knowledge passed down through generations of people who have lived with wood heat. First, the coals are raked forward toward the front of the fireplace, spreading them into a bed that will provide maximum contact with new fuel. A poker, a simple iron rod with a handle, serves this purpose, stirring the coals and causing them to glow brighter as fresh air reaches their surfaces. The heat radiating from these coals is intense, warming the face and hands of whoever tends the fire. Once the coals are properly arranged, new wood is added, but not the large logs that will burn through the evening. First come smaller pieces, kindling-size splits that will catch quickly from the heat of the coals and establish good flames. 3 or 4 of these pieces are placed directly on the coals, positioned to allow air circulation beneath and between them. Within moments, these pieces begin to smoke as their surfaces heat. Then small flames appear, growing quickly as the dry wood reaches ignition temperature. The flames are bright and active, dancing and flickering as they consume the smaller pieces of wood. As these initial pieces establish a good fire, larger splits are added, pieces perhaps 4 or 5 inches in diameter, substantial enough to burn for an hour or more, but not so large as to smother the developing flames. These pieces are placed carefully, creating a structure that allows air flow while maintaining contact between pieces so heat can transfer and flames can spread. The art of fire building involves understanding these principles, knowing how to arrange fuel for optimal combustion, recognizing when to add more wood and when to simply let the fire develop. With the fire rebuilt and burning well, attention turns to lighting oil lamps throughout the lodge. As daylight fades outside, these lamps become increasingly important, providing the illumination necessary for cooking, reading, and simply moving safely through the space. The lamps used in the lodge are traditional kerosene lamps with glass chimneys, simple but effective technology that has remained essentially unchanged for more than a century. Each lamp consists of a reservoir for fuel, a wick that draws the fuel upward, and a glass chimney that protects the flame while creating the draft necessary for clean combustion. Lighting these lamps requires attention and a bit of skill. First, the glass chimney is removed and set aside carefully. The wick is adjusted, raised slightly from its lowered storage position to the correct height for burning. A match is struck and held to the wick until it catches, producing a small flame that might initially smoke if the wick is dirty or improperly trimmed. The chimney is then replaced, the glass settling into its groove in the burner assembly, and immediately the flame changes character, burning brighter and more steadily as the chimney creates proper draft. Several lamps are lit and distributed throughout the great room, one on the table, one on a shelf near the kitchen area, one on the mantel above the fireplace, one on a small table near the seating area. Each lamp creates a pool of light around itself, warm and somewhat yellow in tone, different from the cooler light of electricity or even the warmer light of candles. These pools of light overlap somewhat, but leave areas of shadow, creating a play of light and dark that is visually interesting and that gives the space depth and character. The kitchen stove also receives attention as evening approaches, its fire being rebuilt much like the fireplace fire, though on a smaller scale. The stove has been allowed to burn down somewhat during the afternoon, maintaining just enough heat to keep water hot, but not consuming fuel unnecessarily. Now, as the time for preparing the evening meal approaches, the stove fire is built up again, small pieces of wood added to the coals, the drafts adjusted to provide good airflow, the fire developing quickly to produce the heat necessary for cooking. Meal preparation begins with simple tasks: the gathering of ingredients and equipment, the washing of vegetables, the organization of the cooking space. The evening meal at the lodge is not elaborate or complicated, but rather simple and hearty, appropriate to the setting and the season. Perhaps there will be soup, a thick vegetable soup that has been simmering slowly during the day, its ingredients melding together into a harmonious whole. Perhaps there will be fresh bread, baked earlier and now warmed near the stove, its crust crispy and its interior soft and warm. Perhaps there will be cheese and apples, simple foods that need no preparation beyond slicing and arranging. As these preparations proceed, the light outside continues to fade, the sky transitioning through a series of colors, from the blue of afternoon to pale gold near the horizon to deeper blue, and then violet higher in the sky. The frozen lake reflects these colors, its white surface taking on hints of pink and purple as the last light strikes it. The mountains on the far shore become silhouettes, dark shapes against the sky, losing their details and becoming pure form. Inside the lodge, the contrast between interior warmth and light and exterior cold and darkness becomes increasingly pronounced. The windows, which during the day provide views and connection to the landscape, now begin to function more as mirrors, reflecting the interior of the lodge back to those inside. The firelight and lamplight create a warm, inviting scene that is mirrored in the dark glass, suggesting safety and comfort, emphasizing the lodge's role as refuge from the winter night. The temperature inside the lodge remains comfortable, the combination of fireplace and stove providing ample heat, the thick log walls and insulation in the ceiling retaining that heat effectively. Outside, the temperature is dropping, as it always does after sunset, the cold intensifying as the earth radiates away the day's accumulated warmth. This dropping temperature makes the warmth of the lodge all the more appreciated, creates a sense of gratitude for shelter and fire, reinforces the fundamental human need for protection from the elements. As full darkness approaches and the evening meal nears completion, the lodge settles into its nighttime character, a character defined by firelight and lamplight, by warmth and the smell of food, by the sense of being enclosed and protected while the wild world continues outside. This transition from day to evening is one of the most satisfying aspects of spending time at the lodge, a daily ritual that never loses its appeal, a movement from the active engagement with the outdoor landscape to the quieter pleasures of interior space, from the visual dominance of the external world to the more intimate scale of the lodge itself. The frozen lake, twilight, the period of twilight, that transitional time between day and night when the sun has set but darkness has not yet fully arrived, creates some of the most beautiful and mysterious effects on the frozen lake and the landscape surrounding it. This time lasts perhaps 30 to 40 minutes in winter, longer than in summer due to the low angle of the sun and the way light refracts through the atmosphere. During these minutes, the world undergoes a transformation that is both dramatic and subtle, visible moment by moment, yet somehow surprising when comparing the beginning to the end. As the sun drops below the horizon, the direct sunlight that has been illuminating the landscape disappears, but light remains, reflected and refracted through the atmosphere from the sun now below the visible edge of the world. This indirect light has a particular quality, cooler in tone than direct sunlight, more even and diffused, eliminating shadows while creating a kind of overall glow that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Under this light, the frozen lake takes on an ethereal quality, its white surface appearing almost luminous, as if lit from within rather than from above. The colors in the sky during twilight are extraordinary, especially in winter when the air is clear and cold, free of the haze and humidity that can obscure colors in other seasons. The western horizon, where the sun has just disappeared, glows with bands of color. Orange nearest the horizon fading to yellow, then to green. Then, these bands are not sharp-edged, but rather blend into each other, creating gradients that shift and change as the light continues to fade. The frozen lake reflects these sky colors, its surface acting as a massive horizontal mirror. The reflection is not perfect, as the snow covering the ice diffuses and scatters the light rather than reflecting it specularly like a true mirror would. But the overall effect is still strong. The lake appears to glow with the same colors visible in the sky, the white snow taking on hints of pink and purple and blue, transforming from a simple white expanse into something more complex and beautiful. This transformation is temporary, lasting only as long as the twilight itself, making it precious and worth pausing to observe and appreciate. The mountains on the far shore of the lake, which have been visible all day as detailed forms with texture and variation, now appear as pure silhouettes, black shapes against the colored sky. All detail is lost in shadow, and the mountains become abstract forms, their profiles sharp and clean against the lighter background. This abstraction emphasizes their shapes, the curves and angles of their ridgelines, the peaks and saddles that define their character. Seen this way, the mountains appear even more dramatic than in full daylight, reduced to their essential forms without distracting details. The forest around the lake also becomes silhouetted, the individual trees losing their identity and merging into a dark mass that defines the boundary between ice and land. Here and there, individual trees might be distinguished by their shapes, a particularly tall pine standing above its neighbors, or a dead snag with broken branches creating a distinctive profile. But mostly the forest appears as a continuous dark line, emphasizing the horizontal nature of the landscape, the way the valley lies flat between the rising slopes on either side. As twilight progresses, the first stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. They appear gradually, not all at once, the brightest ones becoming visible first, small points of light emerging from the blue-black background. These first stars are often planets rather than actual stars, Venus or Jupiter, bright enough to overcome the remaining light in the sky. As minutes pass, more stars appear, fainter ones becoming visible as the sky continues to darken, until finally hundreds and then thousands of stars are visible, spread across the entire dome of the sky. The appearance of stars changes the character of the twilight, adding a new element to the scene, connecting the immediate landscape of lake and forest to the larger cosmos beyond. The stars remind that the Earth is not isolated but part of a vast system, that the darkness of night is actually filled with light from distant suns, that what seems empty is actually full. This connection can be humbling or comforting or simply fascinating, depending on one's mood and perspective. On the frozen lake, in the growing darkness, the ice fishing shelters that appeared as simple rectangles during daylight now begin to show points of light, evidence that they are occupied, that people are inside them, tending their lines, seeking the fish that swim in the dark water beneath the thick ice. These lights are small and distant, tiny spots of orange or yellow that flicker and glow against the vast darkness, creating a sense of human presence in the landscape, suggesting community and shared activity even in this remote location. The sounds of twilight are different from those of full day or full night. During the day, there might be wind, bird calls, the sounds of human activity. During full night, there is often deep silence, broken only by occasional animal sounds. But during twilight, there is a particular quality to the soundscape, a sense of transition and change. Birds that have been active during the day settle into roosting places, often calling as they do so, creating a chorus of evening sounds. Owls that will be active during the night begin to call, their hooting carrying across the frozen landscape, announcing territories and seeking mates. The ice itself sometimes makes sounds during twilight, responding to temperature changes as the surface cools rapidly, while the water beneath remains at a more stable temperature. These sounds range from quiet ticking and cracking to occasional loud booms that can be startling to those unfamiliar with them. The sounds are caused by ice expanding and contracting, by internal stresses being released, by the ice adjusting to changing conditions. These sounds are completely normal and not dangerous, simply part of the acoustic environment of a frozen lake. From inside the lodge, watching this twilight transformation through the large windows, there is a sense of privilege and peace, of being able to observe these natural phenomena from a position of comfort and safety. The warmth of the fire is at one's back. The smell of the evening meal fills the air. The soft light from oil lamps creates a cozy atmosphere. And meanwhile, outside, the world transforms itself in this daily ritual of light, giving way to darkness. The contrast between interior comfort and exterior beauty creates a perfect balance, neither too insulated from nature nor too exposed to its challenges. As twilight finally gives way to full darkness, as the last color fades from the sky and true night arrives, the frozen lake becomes a study in black and white, snow and shadow, lit primarily by starlight and perhaps by moonlight if the moon has risen. The landscape simplifies, losing details, becoming more about shapes and forms than textures and colors. This simplification has its own beauty, stark and clean, emphasizing the essential character of the place, the way the land lies, the relationships between elements. The frozen lake at twilight and into night is not less beautiful than during the day, but differently beautiful, offering a different kind of experience, engaging different senses and different aesthetic appreciation, completing the cycle of the day and preparing for the particular pleasures. The original purpose of the lodge was probably as a fishing and hunting camp, a place where groups of friends or family members could gather for extended stays pursuing outdoor activities. Over the years, this purpose may have evolved or expanded, with the lodge serving different roles for different people, sometimes a family vacation destination, sometimes a refuge for writers or artists seeking solitude and inspiration, sometimes simply a place to escape and rest, to experience the peace and beauty of the winter landscape. Stories about the lodge accumulate over time, each group of visitors adding their experiences to the collective history. There are stories about particularly severe winter storms, when snow fell for days and drifted to the lodge's eaves, when visitors had to dig tunnels to reach the woodshed, when the challenge was not in arriving at the lodge, but in simply maintaining basic comfort while the storm raged outside. These stories are told with a mixture of awe and pride, celebrating both the power of nature and the human ability to endure. and even thrive in challenging conditions. There are stories about remarkable fishing, days when the lake seemed to give up its treasure freely, when nearly every line dropped through the ice resulted in a catch, when dinners featured fresh fish prepared in various ways, when the question was not whether there would be food, but what to do with the abundance. These stories are told with pleasure and satisfaction, celebrating success, but also the simple joy of engaging with the natural world, of participating in the ancient activity of catching one's food, of the connection between action and result. There are stories about wildlife encounters, both ordinary and extraordinary, stories about deer coming close to the lodge, emboldened by hunger or curiosity, allowing close observation and photography, stories about foxes trotting across the frozen lake, about owls perched in nearby trees, about the tracks of larger animals, moose or even wolves, discovered in fresh snow and followed to see where they lead. These stories celebrate the presence of wildlife in the landscape, the privilege of sharing space with these creatures, the reminder that humans are not the only inhabitants of this place. There are stories about human connections made at the lodge, friendships formed or strengthened through shared experiences, stories about long conversations by the fireplace, about laughter and companionship, about the way that being in this remote location somehow facilitates deeper connections than seem possible in more ordinary settings. These stories acknowledge that while the lodge is situated in wilderness, it remains a human space, that part of its purpose is to provide a setting for people to connect with each other as well as with nature. The tradition of solitude at the lodge is also part of its history and character. Not every visit involves groups or parties. Sometimes individuals come alone, seeking time for reflection and renewal, space to think without distraction, opportunity to reconnect with themselves as much as with nature. The lodge accommodates this need for solitude beautifully, providing all necessary comforts while making no demands, allowing each person to structure their time according to their own needs and preferences. The silence of the lodge, when inhabited by a single person, has a different quality than when filled with voices, neither better nor worse, but different, suitable for different purposes and different states of mind. Winter storms are a recurring theme in lodge stories, as they are among the most dramatic and memorable experiences that can occur here. The storms that affect this region in winter can be substantial, bringing heavy snowfall and strong winds that transform the landscape and challenge anyone present. Stories tell of storms that lasted 3 or 4 days, during which visibility was reduced to nearly zero. When going outside, even for necessary tasks, required ropes or strict attention to maintain orientation. When the lodge became a true refuge, an island of warmth and safety in a world of wind and snow. During such storms, the lodge demonstrates its value most clearly, its solid construction keeping out wind and snow, its thick walls and efficient fires maintaining comfortable temperatures, even when outside conditions are extreme. The experience of being inside the lodge during a severe storm is said to be paradoxically pleasant. The contrast between interior comfort and exterior wildness, creating a sense of safety and even coziness that might not be possible in less extreme conditions. There is satisfaction in knowing that one is secure and comfortable while nature demonstrates its power just beyond the walls. The legends associated with the lake itself add another layer to the lodge's story. Like many remote bodies of water, this lake has accumulated various tales and folklore, some based in fact, others purely imaginative. all contributing to the sense. There are stories about the lake's depth, about areas where the bottom has never been found, about underwater caves or structures. There are stories about unusual fish, specimens of remarkable size, or species not typically found at this elevation. There are stories about the lake's moods, about times when it seems welcoming and times when it feels somehow dangerous or unwelcoming. These stories and legends, whether factual or fanciful, serve important purposes. They connect people to place, creating a relationship that goes deeper than simple physical presence. They provide entertainment and material for conversation. They acknowledge mystery and the unknown, accepting that not everything can or should be fully explained and understood. They contribute to the lodge's character, making it more than just a building in the wilderness, but rather a place with depth and history, a place worthy of respect and attention. As the evening progresses and these stories are told or contemplated, the fire continues to burn, its flames providing light and warmth, its crackling and popping providing a gentle acoustic background. The combination of firelight, story, warmth, and the knowledge of the cold darkness outside creates an atmosphere that has been repeated countless times throughout human history, connecting this modern experience to ancient patterns of human behavior and social organization. There is something fundamental and deeply satisfying about gathering around fire in the darkness, about sharing stories and companionship, about creating warmth and light in the midst of winter's cold and dark. As the evening extends into deep night, the lodge settles into its quietest and most contemplative state. The activities of the day and evening, the meals and conversations and storytelling, have concluded or wound down, and now the focus shifts to simple presence, to being rather than doing, to appreciating the moment and the setting without agenda or plan. This is perhaps the most special time at the lodge, when the stillness and peace reach their deepest point, when the sense of being removed from the ordinary world is most pronounced. The fire in the great fireplace has been rebuilt one final time before bed, loaded with large logs that will burn slowly through the night, providing heat until morning without requiring attention. These logs are positioned carefully, the largest pieces placed at the back and sides where they will burn most slowly, smaller pieces in front where they will burn more quickly and provide more immediate heat and flame. The overall arrangement creates a fire that will maintain itself for 6 or 8 hours, gradually burning down, but never going completely out, leaving substantial coals in the morning that can be used to quickly rebuild the fire. The oil lamps throughout the lodge have been extinguished one by one, except for perhaps a single lamp left burning low in the great room, providing minimal light for anyone who might need to move about during the night. The extinguishing of these lamps changes the character of the space dramatically, the warm yellow light they provided disappearing, leaving only the flickering orange glow from the fireplace to illuminate the interior. This firelight creates a more primal atmosphere, more directly connected to ancient human experiences, light from combustion rather than from any more modern technology. Outside, the night is fully dark now, the last traces of twilight long since faded, the sky black except for the stars and possibly the moon. The stars visible from this remote location, far from any city lights or other sources of light pollution, are extraordinary in their number and brightness. The Milky Way is clearly visible, a river of light flowing across the sky, composed of billions of stars too distant to be distinguished individually, but collectively creating a luminous band. Constellations are obvious, their patterns clear and easy to trace, the stories and myths associated with them coming readily to mind. The moon, if it is present and visible, transforms the landscape dramatically. Moonlight on snow creates illumination bright enough to read by, bright enough to cast distinct shadows, bright enough to allow easy navigation without any artificial light. Under moonlight, the frozen lake becomes a silvery expanse, the snow taking on a bluish-white appearance that seems almost supernatural. The forest appears black against this bright background, individual trees creating complex patterns of dark and light, shadow and illumination. If the moon is not present, or if it has not yet risen or has already set, the landscape remains darker, lit only by starlight. Under these conditions, the frozen lake appears as a dimly visible area, distinguishable from the surrounding forest by its flatness and slight luminosity, but without the dramatic clarity that moonlight provides. This darkness is profound, the kind of darkness that is rarely experienced in more populated areas, darkness that engages different senses and creates different awareness. The sounds of deep night are minimal but significant. The lodge itself makes occasional sounds as it settles and adjusts to temperature changes, wood expanding and contracting, causing small creaks and pops. The fire makes its continuous soft sounds, the burning wood crackling, occasionally a log shifting position with a soft thump, sparks rising up the chimney. Outside, if the wind is blowing, it creates sound as it moves through the trees, a rushing or sighing that can be either soothing or slightly eerie, depending on its intensity and one's state of mind. The ice on the lake makes sounds during the night, responding to temperature changes and internal stresses. These sounds can be quite dramatic, ranging from quiet ticking and cracking to loud booms that sound almost like gunshots, startling to anyone unfamiliar with the phenomenon. These ice sounds are caused by the ice expanding and contracting, by cracks propagating through the ice sheet, by various mechanical stresses being released. They are completely normal and not indicative of any danger, simply part of the acoustic environment of a frozen lake in winter. Animal sounds occasionally break the silence of the night. An owl might hoot from somewhere in the forest, calling to establish territory or communicate with a mate. Coyotes might howl in the distance, their voices carrying across the frozen landscape, creating harmonies and dissonances that sound both wild and somehow musical. These animal sounds serve as reminders that the wilderness continues its life, even during the hours of darkness, that the lodge exists within a larger ecosystem where numerous species pursue their various survival strategies. The temperature continues to drop through the night, as it always does in winter, when the earth radiates away its stored heat and no sunlight arrives to replace it. The coldest point of the night typically comes just before dawn, when the night has been longest and the cooling process most complete. This dropping temperature might be noticed inside the lodge as well, particularly in areas far from the fireplace, though the lodge's thick walls and good construction moderate the effect significantly, maintaining comfortable temperatures throughout the interior, even as outside temperatures drop to well below freezing. For someone still awake in the lodge during these deep night hours, perhaps sitting in a chair near the fire, wrapped in a blanket, the experience is one of profound peace and stillness. The combination of warmth from the fire, the gentle light it provides, the solid shelter of the lodge, and the awareness of the vast wilderness outside creates a unique mental and emotional state. There is contentment, a sense of being exactly where one should be, doing exactly what one should be doing, which is essentially nothing beyond being present and aware. This state allows for reflection and contemplation, for thoughts to wander freely without the demands and distractions that fill most waking hours. Memories might surface and be examined without urgency or anxiety. Plans and possibilities might be considered in a relaxed, exploratory way. Questions about life and meaning and purpose might arise and be pondered without any pressure to reach conclusions. The deep night at the lodge provides space for this kind of mental and emotional work, if work is even the right word for it. This kind of being with oneself that is increasingly rare in modern life. Occasionally, in the depth of winter night at northern latitudes, the aurora borealis might appear, the northern lights creating moving curtains of color in the sky. These lights are caused by interactions between solar wind and the Earth's magnetic field and atmosphere. Scientific explanation that somehow does not diminish their magic and beauty. The aurora appears as waves or curtains of light, primarily green, but sometimes showing reds and purples and other colors, moving and shifting in ways that seem almost alive, almost conscious. Watching the aurora from the lodge, seeing these lights reflected on the frozen lake, is an experience that transcends description, one of those moments when nature reveals itself as far more amazing and mysterious than ordinary experience suggests. As deep night continues and the hours move toward dawn, the lodge maintains its role as shelter and refuge, providing warmth and safety while the winter night surrounds it on all sides. The fire burns on, the walls stand firm, the roof keeps out cold and weather, and within this secure space, rest and renewal are possible. Sleep comes easily and deeply, and the body and mind recover from the day's activities and prepare for what tomorrow will bring. In the hours before dawn, when night is deepest and the approach of morning seems impossibly distant, there is a particular quality to the stillness at the lodge that surpasses even the quiet of evening. This is the time when sleep is deepest, when the world seems most at rest, when the cycle of day and night reaches its furthest point from daylight, before beginning the slow return. At the lodge, in the bedrooms and the great room, all is quiet except for the soft sounds of breathing, the occasional creak of the building, the low murmur of the dying fire. The fire in the great fireplace has burned down through the night. The large logs placed there many hours ago, now reduced to smaller remnants and a substantial bed of coals. These coals still hold impressive heat, glowing red-orange when air passes over them, pulsing with stored energy. The flames are minimal now, occasional flickers dancing across the surface of the coals, but the heat continues, radiating outward to maintain comfortable temperature in the great room even in these coldest hours before dawn. Outside, the frozen lake and surrounding landscape exist in whatever state the night has brought. If the sky is clear, the stars shine with maximum brilliance in the darkness before dawn, undiminished by any approaching light. The lake appears as a dark expanse, its white snow surface visible only dimly under starlight or moonlight, its vast flatness distinguishable mainly by the absence of vertical elements that characterize the surrounding forest. If clouds have moved in during the night, the darkness is more complete, the sky and land merging into continuous darkness, broken only by the slightly lighter tone of the snow-covered lake. The temperature outside has reached its lowest point, perhaps dropping to 0 degrees Fahrenheit or below, cold enough that exposed skin would be at risk of frostbite within minutes, cold enough that breath would freeze in beards and mustaches, cold enough that the very air seems to crackle and spark with cold. Inside the lodge, protected by thick walls and maintained heat from the fireplace, the temperature remains comfortable, perhaps slightly cool in corners far from the fire, but nowhere approaching the extreme cold outside. As the hours pass and dawn approaches, the first change is often not visible, but felt, a subtle shift in the quality of the darkness, a sense that the night is beginning to loosen its grip even though no actual light is yet apparent. This change is so subtle that it might be imagination, a product of knowing that dawn must eventually come. But nevertheless, there is a sense of transition beginning, of the world preparing to shift from darkness to light once again. The first actual visible change comes in the eastern sky, visible through the lodge windows if one happens to be looking at the right moment. The absolute black of the night sky begins to show the slightest hint of dark blue, almost imperceptible at first, a change that might be real or might be optical illusion. But gradually, over minutes, this change becomes undeniable. The sky definitely lighter in the east than overhead or in the west, the darkness beginning to give way to dawn. This lightening of the sky proceeds slowly but steadily, the dark blue becoming slightly lighter, then noticeably lighter, then clearly blue rather than black, though still a deep blue far from the bright blue of midday. As the eastern sky lightens, stars begin to disappear, the fainter ones first, then progressively brighter ones as the sky continues to brighten. The transition is gradual, stars winking out one by one, the constellations losing their fainter members first, then their brighter stars, until only the very brightest stars and planets remain visible against the lightening sky. On the horizon, where sky meets mountains, the color begins to change, hints of yellow and orange appearing, suggesting the sun's approach, though the sun itself remains below the horizon. These colors spread upward and outward, transforming the sky from uniform blue to a gradient of blues and golds and pinks, creating a display that changes moment by moment, never the same twice, each dawn unique in its particular combination of colors and clouds and light. The frozen lake responds to this increasing light, its surface gradually becoming more visible, more detailed, transforming from a vague darker area to a clearly defined white expanse. The texture of the snow becomes apparent, the drifts and ridges visible again, the tracks and marks on the surface showing themselves. The ice fishing shelters emerge from darkness, becoming visible as distinct structures rather than as vague dark spots. The far shore of the lake, which was invisible during the night, returns to view, the forest there becoming a dark line separating lake from mountains. Inside the lodge, the increasing light outside begins to penetrate through the windows, adding to the dim firelight that has been the only illumination through the night. This natural light is still weak, hardly enough to read by, but it marks a transition, the beginning of the change from nighttime to daytime environment. The interior of the lodge begins to reveal itself again, furniture emerging from shadow, details becoming visible that were obscured during the night. The fire in the fireplace still holds substantial coals, and as morning light increases, these coals remain visible as glowing embers, red-orange points of heat in the growing light. Soon, when the lodge fully wakes, these coals will be stirred and new wood added, the fire rebuilt to provide warmth and possibly heat for cooking breakfast. But for now, in these moments of transition between night and day, the coals simply glow quietly, maintaining their heat, ready to serve when called upon. The birds outside begin to stir and call as dawn approaches, their voices the first sounds of the new day. A raven calls from somewhere in the forest, its harsh voice carrying across the frozen landscape. Other birds join in, chickadees and nuthatches, their smaller voices creating a chorus that builds gradually as light increases. These bird sounds signal the beginning of daily activity, the end of night's rest, the start of another cycle of feeding and survival. As dawn continues and the sun finally breaks above the eastern horizon, its first rays striking the tops of mountains and trees, the frozen lake is bathed in golden light that transforms its appearance completely. The white snow takes on warm tones, pink and gold, the shadows between drifts showing deep blue, the overall effect breathtakingly beautiful. This moment of sunrise, when the first direct sunlight strikes the landscape after the long night, is one of the most beautiful times at the lodge. Daily miracle that never loses its power to amaze and inspire. Inside the lodge, as morning light floods through the windows and the new day begins in earnest, there is a sense of completion and renewal, of the night's rest being finished and a new day's possibilities opening. The peace and stillness of the night give way to gentle activity, to the rebuilding of the fire, to the preparation of breakfast, to the resumption of waking life. But the memory of the night remains, the deep peace and stillness, the sense of being sheltered and safe, the experience of winter wilderness, both outside and inside consciousness. The lodge has served its purpose through another night, providing shelter and warmth and comfort, being exactly what it was designed to be, a refuge and haven in the midst of the frozen landscape. A place where winter can be experienced not as hardship or challenge, but as beauty and peace and profound connection to the natural world. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more calming tales. Thank you for listening, and good night.